Hi, all. I don't know if you can hear me. This is Kelly McGuire. I was able to call in on the phone number. I just can't see anybody.
I'm in the same boat, Kelly. We can hear you, I believe.
Great.
So you are our first presenter. Would you like to speak to this grant?
Sure. So this is a $500,000 grant to the Office on Violence Against Women with Department of Justice. And the goal of it is to increase school and community collaboration to improve response to school-age youth that are experiencing dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. And it funds 5 positions that would work together as part of a team. And I think what I think about when I think about why this grant is needed is the situation that happened in Frenchtown, if you all remember that, when a student was sexually assaulted by her music teacher, and the school was really not well prepared to respond to that. And she and another student ended up being bullied. There was a school board meeting that was called where 100 people showed up in support of the teacher. And it was just a really bad situation. And so what this grant would do is really bolster that school community collaboration to make sure that those students are responded to well, that they are safe, that they get the services that they need. And so it would fund 3 positions at RVS. It would fund 0.1 FTE of my time to administer the grant. It would fund Erica Ritzema, who is a prevention specialist, and a half-time advocate, Rebecca Calabrese. It would also fund coordinator at the web, and it would fund a new position at MCPS, which would be a half-time Title IX specialist. And so those folks would work together as part of a team on the child protection team. They would get to work with a consultant to do a community strength and needs assessment and a strategic plan. There's $40,000 in required training funds through the grant. I'm trying to think of other stuff. And there would be other activities like a youth action committee. So that's my summary. Does anybody have questions about the grant?
Yeah, how much are we hoping to, I mean, if the grant is successful, how much is it?
It's $500,000 over 3 years.
Okay, great, thank you.
Kelly, this is Dave Strohmeyer. So by your description of the programming that you mentioned, it sounds like a lot of this is new. So this is not just funding that we've received in the past that we're re-upping again right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it does cover activities that have already been happening, but it also adds new activities, mostly in the form of collaboration on the team. And so the way that folks are currently funded is Erica, our prevention specialist, is funded through a grant from the Montana Board of Crime Control, but that was a special targeted grant and they don't anticipate offering it again, so that funding will be gone in a year. And as far as the advocate, that would be additional funds to expand her ability to collaborate with the schools. The GUTS program coordinator is a person who currently exists, but the YWCA is being particularly impacted by COVID-19. They've had to lay off non-essential staff and reduce manager hours, and at this point they are unsure about the future of GUTS. So this grant would be really helpful for them in continuing that program. But the position at MCPS is new.
Their strengths.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I'm just saying, and GUTS is girls understanding their strengths.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, when you're in this work, you assume everybody knows all your acronyms. So please.
So
please
does that mean that
clarify.
there's an acronym for boys understanding their strengths? Which I can.
No, there should be a boys group too. There isn't one right now
It's
that
a
I know.
terrible
Well, the
acronym.
acronym would be accurate.
The acronym
probably.
Oh, but.
Yeah. So Kelly, is the halftime position at MCPS, is that new?
That is a new position. And so that came about in talking with Dave Rott, who's the HR director at the schools, and he also handles all the Title IX stuff at MCPS. And he has really been wanting to bolster their response to Title IX cases at MCPS, but just hasn't had capacity. And so he is really excited to partner with us on the grant.
So is this the sort of thing where the school board writes a letter of support, or you get something from Rob Watson as well?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
I was just wondering, so is this the sort of thing where the school board or Rob Watson also weighs in and writes a letter of support or makes some type of demonstration that they see the importance of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rob Watson will also be signing the memorandum of understanding.
Great. Well, it seems like on their side, this is, I'm surprised they don't already have someone in who does this type of work.
Yeah, they do. It's Dave though, and he's also the HR director, and so he is just doing so much already.
Well, this sounds good. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the grant application and associated documents for submittal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, go get that grant, Kelly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Cindy.
Good morning. This is Cindy Kennedy with Grants and Community Programs. I am requesting that the board approve a client service agreement between Newfields Companies, LLC and Missoula County to authorize Newfields to perform designated services related to the Brownfields Assessment Grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. And this contract equates to approximately $283,000 over 3 years. It'll allow Newfields to provide services as a qualified environmental professional, and they will be performing phase 1, phase 2 assessments, community outreach, community redevelopment, potentially cleanup planning, that sort of stuff. And we've had this grant from the EPA since October 1st, and so we're kind of under the gun to get busy and get to work. And a lot of the work that related to like phase 1 assessments and community outreach can be done without violating the shelter-in-place directive from the governor. Great. The other work would obviously need to be done in the field, and some of that could possibly be done as well without violating that directive. Are there any questions?
No, I hope we can get on this. So I move to approve the client service agreement between Newfields and Missoula County.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
Right.
Cindy.
Great.
Hey,
Thank you.
can I ask what sites they're assessing?
What sites they're testing?
Yeah.
So we have a few sites that are potentials. I wouldn't say that we are in a position where we've secured any sites, but we have lots of interest. So there's a potential buyer of Marshall Mountain that's interested. And typically what happens with these large property transactions is banks will not loan money until these assessments are done. And the Bonner West Log Yard, the Harris Thermal site, it's on Cowboy Trail across from the town pump off of the interstate in Bonner. That property's on the market right now, and they have had phase 1 and phase 2s in the past, but they've expired. So they would probably need some phase 1 and phase 2 assessments. The Milltown State Park could potentially, the area adjacent to it that's owned by International Paper, that's a potential site. Kettle House Brewery in Bonner, the owner of that business has expressed interest in getting some assessments done. And then we could potentially be doing some assessments in East Missoula around some redevelopment. And then the one thing about this grant that's kind of cool and has a lot of potential is we can use it for redevelopment. And so there's a lot of potential. I mean, we could end up with just one site and spend all of the money on redeveloping one particular area, like East Missoula Highway, the highway going through there. So I wouldn't, right now we don't have a solid site, but we've got lots of sites that are prospective and could materialize really soon.
Thanks, Cindy.
You bet. Any other questions?
Leah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Leah, are you out there?
Yeah, I am. Sorry. So, hello, good morning. I'm requesting the board to approve the chair to sign an amendment to our current public health emergency preparedness grant. And this amendment, so the current grant runs 2019 to 2022, and this amendment to the grant is specific for COVID-19 operations. So it's a $135,000 grant that comes down as a pass-through grant from the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act, which was federal, and it is meant to support public health expenses for preparedness and response activities associated with COVID-19 operations. So it's anything related to surveillance, epidemiology, lab capacity, infection control, mitigation, communications, and a variety of other preparedness and response activities. The grant comes with 15 deliverables to submit back to get payment, and they're all related to COVID-19. So they'll be things like an after-action report, reporting how we communicated with our licensed establishments, stuff like that.
Leah, this is Dave Strohmeyer. So to date, $135,000 is not a tremendous amount. So have we blown through that and are just kind of backfilling what has been expended already, or how does that shake down?
You know, I'm not sure that it's all been quite figured out quite yet. So our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant, the original grant, has about $145,000 for this grant year, and then we also have money that the health department has in the health department's fund, and so this would be in addition to that. And I'm not completely certain where we're at exactly, because we're still kind of sorting out whose wages can be paid with it. We know that we can pay overtime with it, but we're putting everything under public health emergency preparedness for now. Sorry, I don't have a very good answer.
That's fine.
We're just still kind of, it's been such a crazy last couple of months that we're still kind of figuring it out. But I'm sure that this will get used up very quickly if it hasn't already gotten used up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I move, this is Juanita Barrow. I move that we approve that Josh signed the amendment number 1 to task order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you.
Okay, Casey.
Hey guys, yeah, so we got the standard contract between the owner and construction manager for the elections building project. This is pretty much the exact same contract we use for the fairgrounds, just adapted for the election center. So pretty standardized and based off guaranteed maximum price. So we'll get that price from the contractor within our budget and go from there. Chris might be able to speak more to it if he wants, but yeah, that's about it. Any questions?
Chris on?
I am. So this is the most updated AIA that has the changes that were requested by the county attorney's office to the standard AIA template. And so the same process of construction manager at risk this is the same form we use for all of those projects, be it the courthouse or the fairgrounds or now the election center, as projects for that. And what it does is we contract with Jackson, who will go through and do all the pre-bid work, do all the bid package opening part of it for us, wrap all those costs, do the value engineering to get it inside budget, and then we get that guaranteed maximum price, which will come as an amendment that tells us exactly how much the cost to do the contract or to do the work that we're asking them to do will be for each scope of work. And then once we have that locked in guaranteed maximum price, that's what comes to you as the amendment. So you've seen quite a few of these for the fairgrounds as the most recent project for them, and the library, sorry.
Chris, could you refresh our memories as far as what the projected timeline is for construction there?
So it is a multi-phase project, and Casey probably has a better handle on the timeline, so I'm going to defer to him, other than to say that there's about I think at least three phases of that in order to match up with the election cycles that are going to happen. But I'll let Casey kind of summarize really quickly what's in each one of those and where the timeline lies.
Yep, so we're in phase 1 now, which will be completed by May 1st, so elections can move in for the primary election. And this is pretty bare bones. They're putting in new doors and lighting just for basic setup in the main area of the warehouse. So then after the primary will be phase 2, and hopefully we'll have our full city build permit by then. So from June to, let's see, beginning October, when they need to come back in for the November election, that will be the phase 2 step, which will hopefully have everything done in that main area. We're still working with ICE, who is in the building, to see when they'll be able to move out to complete that section. And then pending ICE, when ICE moves out and what we can get done, there'll be a phase 3 after the November election to finish things up.
And just to be clear, when you say ICE, that's literally ICE. That's
Martin
not
know.
Immigration.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
the
VW ICE
Center.
that has a big cooler in that one half of the building. So they have about tons of ice loaded in there now.
That would have set
just
Martin's Facebook feed on fire.
With a flame, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I would go ahead and move that we approve the construction contracts.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Great,
Martin,
thanks,
did you have a question?
No, I think they explained it pretty well on that one. Thank you.
Okay, I thought I heard you. Never mind.
All right, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Currently, there's a special prosecutor appointed in a case where Missoula County Attorney's Office has a conflict. That prosecutor in Powell County is taking a new job, and so he asked that we find a new special prosecutor. Doug Schaller is a city prosecutor, and he's agreed to take over this case, which is sort of at its midway point. And so I'm requesting that the commissioners approve the appointment of a special prosecutor in the resolution to see that case through to its end. And again, just as a reminder, there are various circumstances where our office has legal conflicts where we're basically prohibited from carrying forward on the prosecution in a case. When we do so, we ask either other counties, the city attorney's office, or in some cases, the AG's office to assist us. And this is just one of those situations.
Great. This is Juan, and I approve signing the resolution appointing the special deputy county attorney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, we're on to correspondence.
Hey, Josh, I've got a question before you go on to the item on the agenda there. Did we ever, or did you send out that letter to the constituent who was requesting information on what Missoula County's response is to COVID-19?
I can answer that.
Yeah, thanks. I was saying I sent it on to be forwarded and made nice.
Yeah, sorry. Allison went through and did some good edits on it yesterday, and it's on my list to get through today. I just didn't have a chance yesterday.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose that in my ever expanding inbox.
No, it's good. We've got it on track, and it'll get wrapped up. And we're actually gonna, just FYI, we're gonna use it as the foundation for a script for a video. Juanita, maybe tomorrow actually, for you to talk about what city and county government are doing in the daily briefing video. So we're gonna use that laundry list of all the stuff the county's doing to work it into a video for tomorrow.
Awesome.
I've got Allison working on that today.
Oh, excellent. And so that, you think that email will go out to that gentleman today?
I will do my darndest. Okay.
Maybe, do you think we could add a sentence in there at the very top end, just apologizing for the delay and that his ask was a catalyst for the consolidation of a bunch of invaluable information? So
yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Room off. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are you guys ready for me? I have the correspondent. This is Erin Couts.
Yes.
All right. I hope I actually had to come into the office today to do a couple things, and they're doing construction on the front of our building, so I'm hoping it's not going to be too loud, but I can always go towards a different spot in my office. So just this week, I was notified that the Montana DPHHS Addictive and Mental Disorders Division is going to go for a SAMHSA grant, and SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse Mental Health, I can't think of what all the acronym is, but it's a federal agency that provides funding and support for behavioral health type services, and they have funding that came out through the CARES Act to help support communities with behavioral health related services in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so they are getting this funding out to the states. DPHHS is applying for the grant with support from the Montana Healthcare Foundation. And I think that the solicitation just came out at the end of last week, and it is due this Friday. So it's a very, very quick turnaround. But part of the reason for that is that they're trying to get the money out to communities and to states as quickly as possible. So what the state has decided to propose is basically they're going to be requesting funds to just be used for any sort of crisis behavioral health services. And they have decided that the way that they're going to do that is to allocate the funding equally, is what they're proposing at this point, among the 9 counties that currently get the county and tribal matching grant funds. So Missoula is one of those counties. And so I think it's going to be roughly $2 million that the state will get. And by the time that's all divvied up, we would probably get about $135,000 is what they're estimating. And that can be used for any sort of crisis response, really. It will be up to us to figure out how we want to utilize it. But the one caveat that they are doing is that they said, so 70% of the funding would have to go to people with severe disabling mental illness and or substance use disorders. 20% could go to anybody experiencing crisis, but then 10% of the money does have to go to people in the healthcare field who are experiencing, side effects or, effects basically based upon
secondary trauma.
Exactly. Yeah. The work that has been, that they've been kind of going through. And so, anyway, so the state is applying for these funds. I mean, I think the feds are going to be allocating 56 of these. So it's pretty much guaranteed that each state and territory will probably get one. So that's a good thing. But what they are requesting from us is a letter of commitment. It's a requirement. And so anyway, that is what is in front of you currently. Letter of commitment, just saying that, you're committed to working on these issues if we get the funds.
Great.
Do you have any
Absolutely.
questions?
Sounds good.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, sounds really good. Let's do that.
Okay, and I will keep you updated as, once the money comes in. They're hoping to hear in May. Trying to turn back time. So, and then I don't know how quickly the states will get that money out, but they're going to be basically, but just do it as a amendment to our county and tribal matching grant contract. And then we'll be working with them and trying to figure out how we're going to use those funds. So if you have any ideas, please send them my way, and I will keep you updated on how, on what we find out about it.
And what did we
Right.
receive? What did we receive for the county tribal matching grant? Or is that 500,000 for a couple years? Or
It's
can't-
18-month grant, and it is, we got almost 600,000.
okay, great.
It's 584 some. So yeah, so it will be a nice addition, and I think it will really help things.
Fantastic. Well, fingers crossed.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, don't hesitate to let me know if any more questions come up.
Glad you're able to pull this all together by Friday.
Well,
Pretty
I
amazing.
think I have the easy
That would be
part.
tomorrow.
I feel bad for the. Yeah, I'm not the person writing the grant, fortunately, so that helps.
Yeah. Great, thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So commissioners, on that one, I'll be sending that letter through DocuSign separately just to get it signed as quick as we can and back to Cindy, if that's okay.
Great.
Sure.
Sounds good.
It's Aaron, but that's cool.
Oh, to Aaron.
Sorry,
Not
Aaron.
That's okay, Annie. We all blend in together.
All right, this next item looks like a John Hart, Anna Conley, Matt Jennings kind of thing.
Hi, commissioners and everybody else. How's it going, guys?
Yeah.
I assumed that I would be on video today, so I took a shower. So thank you for that. I appreciate that excuse to take a shower or reason.
I'm on the phone. I feel like I'm missing out.
Trust me, you're not. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but so I can't remember which of the discussion items
This
is
was
first.
the heart cell first.
Okay, great.
So Anna,
first yep.
sorry. Do any of these need to be closed? Because if they do, we do have the Montana, the per diem one, which I know has to be open.
Yeah, no, from my perspective now, none of this needs to be closed. Depending on how the conversation goes, we can certainly close if we need to do that. But at this time, I don't recommend closing.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure because we have that separate link if we need to. So.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Chris. That's really helpful. First, I should apologize that I didn't get this circulated to you last week when it came out. This is the Montana Supreme Court decision with regard to the Missoulian right to know case. So this stems from a November 19th, 2017 arrest of Brandon Shea by Doug Hartzell, who was a deputy with the sheriff's office and is no longer employed. The Missoulian requested body cam, dash cam footage with regard to the arrest, and we filed a DEC action, and that DEC action is a declaratory action which basically said, hey, there's a privacy interest here, there's a public right to know, court, please do the balancing test. The Missoulian was a part of that action, as well as Mr. Hartzell was a part of that action. The other issue that was part of that case is Bill Bertletter, who's a current deputy at the sheriff's office. Ultimately, there was a pending criminal investigation for Hartzell's use of force in the arrest of Brandon Shea. So the district court determined not to disclose any of the information until that was done. Ultimately, there were criminal charges filed against Mr. Hartzell that resulted in a deferred prosecution. And then, sort of surprisingly, in July of 2019, the district court judge issued a one-line order saying this case is moot. So even though the criminal case had resolved, there was no disclosure because the case had been ruled on as moot. So what moot means in the law is there's no longer an issue. However, the Missoulian believed that there was still an issue because the records that had been requested had not been provided. We agreed that there was still an issue and that the issue wasn't moot. So the Missoulian appealed that mootness order to the Supreme Court. While the appeal was pending, we resolved the issue of the Bill Burt letter by providing a redacted version of that letter to the Missoulian. So the only issue in the Supreme Court appeal was the Hartzell dash cam with regard to the Brandon Shea arrest. Essentially, what we in the Missoulian said to the Montana Supreme Court was the same thing. Someone's got to do a balancing test to look at the privacy interest and the public right to know interest with regard to these Hartzell documents. You can either remand it to the district court to do that, or you can do it yourself. Hartzell's position at the Supreme Court was you have to remand it to the district court to do the balancing test. Ultimately, the Supreme Court last week said, we are going to remand this to the district court to do the balancing test. So it's been remanded, and we assume that the district court will take it up and do the balancing test and determine whether to disclose these Hartzell documents.
Anna, was that in the court of Judge Deshaw, or who was it? Was?
Yes.
And so when it's remanded like this back to district court, does it go back to the same judge who handled it previously?
Yes, but when it gets reversed and remanded, as it did here, the parties have the ability to ask for another judge.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about that one?
No.
It's helpful.
Moderately
Okay.
straightforward.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the claim that we have against the Department of Corrections. As you remember, in the middle of December, we provided notice to the Department of Administration that we have a claim against the Department of Corrections for amounts owed to our detention center. And I think we might have some detention center folks on the line. Cheryl, Jeremiah, Jason, any of you on the line? I see Jason's American flag icon. Okay.
Cheryl sees one.
So we had to give the Department of Administration 4 months after we gave them notice. We gave them notice in the middle of December. Our 4 months runs in a week, and so we can file our complaint on April 20th. We have not received any requests to mediate or further try to resolve this without litigation by the state. So we plan to go ahead and file this complaint on the 20th of April. The complaint is basically a breach of contract complaint. It also has an unjust enrichment claim, and it has a breach of good faith and fair dealing claim. And it seeks to recover amounts incurred by the detention center for housing people in both our MASC, the assessment and sanctions center side of the jail, as well as the county beds. In Montana, it's a strange thing that you can do. You can file a complaint and then you cannot serve it for up to 3 years. So what I would recommend, if you still would like to file this, is we get it filed, but we wait for a couple of months to serve it because all of the agencies in Montana are dealing with the same thing right now. So I would recommend that we file it and then we ask the DOC to accept service in around the middle of the summertime.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, sounds like a really good idea.
Well, does anyone else on the line have something to or anything to add?
This is Jason. I'm in support of moving forward with it. I think it's worth going after for sure.
Anna, who will eventually decide on this?
Well, we'll have to file it in Helena State Court, District Court. So it will be one of the judges in the Helena District Court that will be assigned to this case, most likely, in Lewis and Clark County.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, Martin.
Sure.
Hey, thanks. 2 quick questions, actually. One, any idea what the county is seeking from the state as far as reimbursement? And 2, I'm wondering if one of the commissioners can call up the top of their head what the reimbursement rate is and what the state is currently paying per inmate.
This is Anna, Martin. We have 2 different damages numbers. One is damages that we have incurred for certainty as of today, and the other is a number that is most likely a number that we'll have incurred based on the estimated cost of care. We have most certainly incurred a loss of $2.25 million as of today, and that number is likely quite a bit higher, actually probably a couple million higher. So those are the numbers that we're looking at. And then as far as your reimbursement rate question, Most of what we're getting is about $69 a day from the Department of Corrections, and our actual costs are quite a bit higher than that. And our actual costs vary depending on the unit that they're in and the year. And so I can't give you a solid number for that because it changes.
But is it ballpark like 112, 120? Is that what the ballpark number is?
Yeah, I think that our current rate is estimated at around 112. Is that right, Cheryl and Jason?
The last number I heard for current was 122.
Oh, I knew there were some ones and twos involved. Okay.
That's a long ways from 69.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're currently providing half of what it costs to house an inmate right now, in summary.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. John, do you want to speak to the next one?
I will, Commissioners. Sadly, I didn't seize the opportunity like Anna to make myself more presentable this morning. I apologize. There was some questions earlier in the week from one of the commissioners about getting an update on the county's lawsuit against manufacturers, suppliers, and distributors of opioid pharmaceutical products. Just as some background, I'll remind you that Missoula County hired a Seattle law firm, Keller Rohrbach, to represent the county's interests and file suit against those defendants. And that was done in January of 2019. So our lawsuit has been pending in federal court for approximately 16 months now. Keller Rohrbach filed that lawsuit in United States District Court, that is federal court here in Montana. But our lawsuit, along with lawsuits by every other city and county and other municipal related entity, was consolidated in one federal court jurisdiction in Ohio. And that district is in Cleveland, the Cleveland, Ohio area. I want to say the Southern District of Cleveland, but I believe, or of Ohio, but I believe it's the Northern District. Nonetheless, they've been consolidated in one court in front of Judge Posner, and Judge Posner had I think he had very high hopes, sort of lofty goals of resolving the opioid litigation situation quickly and expeditiously so that money would flow from defendants to plaintiffs as quickly as possible. And unfortunately, just because of the scope of the problem, the literally thousands of plaintiffs and the 50+ defendants that are involved in this litigation, those lofty goals have not been achieved. And from my humble position on the outside looking in, this litigation has and is beginning to transpire much like other mass tort litigations that we've seen that have been similarly consolidated in a federal court for what was hopefully going to be expeditious resolution. I can't remember how long it's been since I've given you all an update about this, but some of the things that have happened of note, you probably know about, but I'll mention anyways. There was a large trial in Oklahoma against several of the defendants, notably Johnson & Johnson. That case went to trial because it was a case by the state of Oklahoma, handled by the Oklahoma Attorney General's office, And that case wasn't transferred to the Cleveland, Ohio court, just like the state of Montana has filed a lawsuit against opioid defendants, and that remains here in the United States District Court for Montana. I'm sorry, that's in state court here. It wasn't even filed in federal court, and that was not an option for a jurisdiction like Missoula County. But the state of Montana, the state of Oklahoma, and several other states can file their actions in state court and proceed with those. That's why the Oklahoma case went to trial this past year, and you may have heard there was, I believe, a 9-figure verdict against Johnson & Johnson and other defendants in that case. The gist of those claims were consumer protection claims. You defendants defrauded the people of the state of Oklahoma in the way that you manufactured, supplied, and distributed opioid products. And so I mentioned that lawsuit because I think there was a hope that with a large verdict like that against most of the defendants, that would force some kind of settlement discussions, settlement negotiations in the consolidated cases in Ohio, and that didn't happen. There have been some settlement discussions that I'm aware of, but they're not going anywhere fast. And I think that's because there's just so many plaintiffs involved. And in order for any one defendant to settle claims in these lawsuits, they want to know that nearly every plaintiff will accept the settlement and settle their claims, and then that defendant can be done with litigation. They can close their books on this and move on, with the business that they want to do. And because there's so many different jurisdictions, so many different law firms involved, it's very difficult to convince everybody, all the cities, all the counties, that one settlement proposal is the right thing to do for nearly everybody else. And I think we're going to continue to see that as a problem with this litigation going on, is it will be difficult to find unanimity among all plaintiffs to settle claims. The second thing I wanted to mention, and I'm sure you've heard this, is that Purdue Pharmaceutical filed for bankruptcy protection last year. Purdue Pharmaceutical was a closely held corporation owned by the Sackler family. Maybe these things are ringing bells for you. They were, Purdue Pharmaceutical is, in my humble opinion, probably the major player, the major force behind at least the distributor or the manufacturers of opioids that drove the opioid crisis to the point that it reached. And they've now filed bankruptcy for bankruptcy protection, and that is not stopped the remaining litigation against the remaining defendants, but it certainly put the brakes on what would otherwise have been a more fluid process. I continue to get a very brief email from Keller Rohrbach about once a week that I review. I don't forward those on to anybody, mostly because they're probably attorney-client privilege. I could probably share them with you commissioners and other management in the county. I've chosen not to do that simply because I don't want to create those public record documents. So in their short emails, it's a little bit of inside baseball to interpret those. And so I am being kept somewhat aware of what of the process of litigation here. But perhaps one thing that we could do in the future, once the world returns to normal again, I think the best way to get an update, a good, cogent, clear update from our council to you, is to probably set up a conference call at some point in time where they can better explain to you than I'm able to what to expect now and what to expect in the future. And that's something that if you're all interested in doing that, that's something that I would help facilitate and put together. But again, I don't think it makes much sense to do that until we're back to a more normal situation. That's all I have, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions I might be able to answer for you.
Oh, that sounds good, John.
Yeah, that's super helpful, and I agree. If we could get them to join us for a meeting once we get beyond the crisis here, that would be pretty beneficial.
Great. Well, I'll remember to do that and touch base with you guys again before I set that up and make sure that's still something that you want to have happen.
Great, thanks. And thanks for asking about this, Dave.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Keep the discussion alive.
So this is Vicki. Under the COVID-19 update, I just have a couple little things I want to bring up. The MAC. So MAC is now just going to meet once a day at 4:30. And then there's another subgroup off of the MAC that is starting to talk about what the future looks like as we come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what Josh has decided, and Josh, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
He would like to be on the discussion meetings with talking about the future. So we would like to have a commissioner join the MAC at 4:30.
This is a spreading the wealth initiative.
Great. Yeah, I can do it, or if it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you want to do it, that's fine, Juan.
Okay. I can do 4:30 MAC, and Josh continue on with our future.
And then I got an email this morning about whether we're recording all the meetings where there's a quorum of commissioners in the teams, and we are not currently. We're doing just admin and public meetings, and that's pretty much what we do for all your meetings when they're in person. There is a way you can start recording all your Teams meetings if you would like. Oftentimes staff is not included in those, and I can show you real quick on the Teams how to record meetings, but I think we either jump all in or we stay consistent with what we've been doing. But I'm looking for some guidance from you guys, what you would like to do.
Do we have anybody have any other thoughts on this?
Well, and I raised the question just insofar as having some sort of a record of discussions we have when there is a quorum present, which there would be none currently, obviously. Maybe Anna has some thoughts.
This is John. Anna had an 11 o'clock call, so she had to leave. Ask me the question again.
I guess the question, John, would be for any of our video conferencing where we're using Teams and there is a quorum of the commission participating in that meeting, ought we to be recording the meeting through Teams?
If it's not an unreasonable burden, I would recommend that that's what you do.
Great, okay.
Okay, so just so you know how to do that,
you just hit the record button.
The three little dots on your Teams.
Yeah.
There's a little thing that says, right now it's showing stop recording because Annie is recording. When you start a meeting, I think it says Go recording or something like that. You would click on that, and then you'd see up at the top, see how at the top of our Teams it says recording has started.
Yep.
You should have that message. And then when whoever is recording, when the meeting is over, they need to hit the stop recording. That's all there is to it. If staff's on your call, then we could be the ones setting up the recording. But if, for instance, you're meeting with a constituent and no staff's involved, you would want to make sure one of you is hitting that recording.
And then we don't have to do anything. It's just captured. It goes to wherever it's supposed to go. We don't have to send it anywhere.
And I'm not even sure where it currently is going. Annie probably could answer that question.
Okay.
So it creates a video, it downloads it, and then sends you the recording right to your email.
Oh,
okay. Okay, whoever starts the recording kind of owns it, I think, at that point.
It also,
go ahead.
This is Ann, sorry, I'm just going to jump into it. It also shows up if you have your Teams application open and you have the channel established for I may be using the wrong terminology with the word channel here, but it shows up in the files portion of the meeting. So you can access it from Teams, and so it's available within Teams.
Okay.
Okay, I guess though in terms of record keeping and archiving and such, if hypothetically one of the three of us are the ones who initiate the recording, do we need to forward something on or communicate that to you or Annie or Sarah or someone? Yes.
Yeah, I would. Sorry. I think we should work on kind of the protocol. I'll work with Ann, and we'll figure out exactly who you should send it to. But yeah, I would say we'll want to have a central location for you to send those to.
Okay, thanks.
The only problem, sorry, go ahead. The only problem that I could foresee, Vicki, is whoever records owns that video and others can't access to edit. So just something to keep in mind, something we might have to work through.
We can work through it, Annie. We'll figure it out offline.
Okay, great.
We don't need to drag you guys into the details on this.
We can hit the record button and stop the record button. Okay.
My last item is the PILT letter that you sent to our delegation. I've been having communication with Rebecca, who's been having conversation with Eric. I'm going to forward you Rebecca's email. They think we should do one more quick outreach, whether it's an email to Tester and Danes, because it's part of the next stimulus bill. And I saw that Andrew sent you a text or an email as we were on the call, but just FYI, there is just a brief description of what Eric and Rebecca think you should send.
Just to follow up on that, Vicki, what I sent was a example of a letter that NACO had provided to the counties that they were suggesting we send to our not just our delegation, but to the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. And it covers a number of topics, and they're all county centric. This last stimulus bill was very difficult for counties to access the funds. Now that in this fourth package, they're making it much more directed towards counties. They're urging direct and flexible funding resources to counties of all sizes, and specifically to populations under 500,000. They're also trying to get past the mandatory funding of PILT, which is what we had in their last letter, including an advance refunding option, clear guidance on the distribution of personal protective equipment, relief for local governments of all sizes. There's a whole host of items in here. I sent it to you because There may be some that you don't want to support, but all of them look pretty good to me, but I appreciate the review, and I could rewrite it and make it more Missoula centric.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Go from there.
As far as the PILT one that Rebecca wants, I'll forward you that and you can look at that and one of you just decide to send it or all of you send an email off. But I'll send that to you here shortly. That's all I had for the COVID update.
And when does it need to go out, Vicki?
I think Rebecca and Eric are saying at least this email on the PILT ASAP.
Okay.
I'll send it to you and you can look at it.
Okay, thanks.
That's
great.
Sort of
Thank
the
you.
same message that NACO has provided with this other letter as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
thanks.
I think we're all set then.
Oh, are we adjourned?
I think. I'm taking a look at the agenda here.
I
So,
can't.
and this, we kind of skipped over. We did 2, 3, 4, and then went back to 1. Anybody else have any other COVID stuff they want to speak on?
Oh, there's a Five Valleys Zoom cocktail, Five Valleys Appreciation,
All right.
Friday, 5 o'clock. And you get to vote for
Nice.
your favorite mountain, Dean Stone or Jumbo. So Zoom 5 o'clock on Friday.
Beware of the Zoom bombers.
Yeah, right.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I heard that Columbia Falls City Council meeting where they were talking about a land use issue got Zoom bombed with some horrible material.
Oh my. Poor
Yeah, in Columbia Falls.
They've been swacked.
At tomorrow's meeting, I hope to provide you some information on the credit card fees that we've been working on with Montana Interactive. So I've
Great.
got my arms around that, and we've managed to get the programming done, and we're ready to go.
Oh, that's really good news. I'm excited that that could be in place in the near future. Is,
Yeah,
that, is that what you think, that it could be in place in the near future?
I think it'd be in place by this Friday, quite honestly.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
And it's a much bigger number than I thought, Josh. I had $1,200 previously because I was looking at the average numbers per month and adding those up. Well, that was average per transaction. The actual numbers about $316,000 per year. What I'm suggesting is we set an upper limit of $3,000 where the county would cover those costs, and beyond that, if they want to use credit cards, go ahead. We had 11 payments last year by credit card that were over $50,000, largest being $188,000. So
it seems pretty reasonable to put a cap on it in the couple $1,000 range. You know, what a person's taxes might be.
At the $3,000 level, if we go for 3 months, I estimate somewhere around $40,000 in costs to the county. That would include all the real estate transactions.
Great. That'll be a real benefit to people.
I think it will.
Good. All right. Do we have any other COVID stuff?
No. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll talk soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.